You're listening to Radio Primavera Sound, proudly presented by Cupra.
Today on Line Noise, we welcome none other than Roni Size to the microphone, a producer who has had more drum and bass hits than you've had awkward breakfasts with your partner's parents. We talked about jazz, the Wild Bunch, Reprazent, Method Man, and so much more. Thanks to the people at the Hospitality in the Woods Festival for setting this up. The festival takes place in Beckenham Place Park on August 19th. With a stellar drum and bass lineup, including Roni himself, High Contrast, Dillinja, Bryan Gee, Jumpin, Jack Frost, and LTJ Bukem, which is pretty amazing. I think you'll agree. Thanks very much to them for setting up this interview, and go and check it out. So, thanks for doing. Thanks a lot for doing this today. I was just thinking, I've been listening to your music for like the best part of 3 decades, so it's great to speak to you.
Hey, well, it was a pleasure being on the call, bro. Nice one.
So, am I right in saying tonight you are playing, you're supporting the Outlook Orchestra, who are doing an orchestral history of drum and bass?
Yeah, that's correct. In about 3 hours.
Are you just DJing normally, or are you part of the whole orchestral thing?
No, I'm just doing a DJ set with Dynamite. But I wouldn't say it's normally. I would just say that, like, as we speak, I'm trying to put together a bit of a eclectic set, which is going to represent a bit of the new, a bit of the nostalgic, the way that I started. And playing in front of a Bristol audience is always a challenge, massive challenge. I mean, they expect so much from me because it's like the heritage, really.
Have you seen them before, the orchestra?
No, I haven't. I've seen a bit on stage, but I haven't seen the orchestra. And to be honest with you, it's yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Do they do any of your tunes?
I will find out. I will get you on the. I will let you know. I do not know. Honestly, I don't know. I know that they might do Brown Paper Bag. Do you know that there's like the reggae, Bristol Reggae Choir Orchestra. There's different elements of that do. I get videos of people doing my stuff all the time from all over the world. So you kind of get all kind of sources into one.
Yeah. So how does it make you feel? Like, an orchestra, well, potentially doing one of your tunes?
Listen, just the fact that anyone just even plays one of my tunes is I feel flattered. You know what I'm saying? There's so much music out there, and it's really hard to try and realize what a modern day classic is. We all know the classics from the original, from when everything started, but trying to make a modern day classic, you know what I mean? Like, people are still playing Brown Paper Bag and tracks like Trust Me and It's a Jazz Thing, and those tunes were done in 1991, 1992, came out in 93. So, anyone playing any of my tunes, whether it's a new tune or an old tune, I'm absolutely flattered.
I wanted to ask actually about sort of the start, when you started. I was reading that basically when you were 16, you went to house parties run by the Wild Bunch. What were they like?
Incredible. It's like back in the day, I wish I bumped into a guy who kind of documented everything the other day. His name's Beezer.
Yeah.
Right? And he documented everything from a photographic point of view. But there are some stuff as well where he wasn't there, which I could recall just me being like the only person there. And that was my school. That was where I used to be able to stand over the DJs and annoy the hell out of them and be a single audience. I remember just watching Nelly Hooper by myself, always trying to get someone's attention from the Wild Bunch, you know what I mean? And I was really close as well with Mushroom, who was like the last member who joined Wild Bunch. So yeah. I was pretty close with him as well.
Presumably you wanted to be a DJ then?
Well, that was the only options. At that time, I knew that I wanted to be involved in music. So at that time, back in the day, it was a case of like, okay, you want to do music. And they sat you in a classroom in school and tried to teach you how to learn about treble clefs, bass clefs, do you know what I mean, 16ths and all that kind of stuff. And which now, in hindsight, I wish I would have learned. But I'm learning backwards now. Do you know what I mean? I know my sharps from my flats and my minors from my majors. Do you know what I mean? I know my sixths and my sevenths, and I know that all now. But back then, the only options that we had were, maybe having a tape deck and trying to mix two tapes together with a double tape deck, or having some belt drive turntables and trying to scratch with those. So it was a progression of just wanting to just be involved in music, and then DJing was the first initial, tribute to wanting to make music, because I couldn't afford a guitar, couldn't afford a violin, couldn't afford a piano, couldn't afford any of the expensive studio mixing boards, drum machines, keyboards, computers, just couldn't afford it. So it was like, what have you got that you can make music with? Well, we've got a tape deck, we've got some old vinyl, we've got this, we've got that. Let's try and put it all together.
But I'm quite surprised that you didn't know much about sort of classic, music theory and stuff back then, or playing instruments, because your music, among other things, has always struck me as being, very melodic, complicated. It's sort of, I can imagine it being made by someone who does know quite a lot about those things.
Yes, it's called self-taught. It's natural. Do you know what I mean? I can look at a keyboard, I can see music. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I was just never given the opportunity. I come from a time where you walk into someone's house and they would start hiding all their Star Wars memorabilia, and because they thought that you was going to nick it or something. It was a complicated time. We're talking about the 70s, the 80s. When I was quite young, and it was difficult. So you picked up, you hear stuff on the radio, you listen to stuff, and you would just say, well, I like the sound of that, but how's that made? And you just have to just try and work out in your head. And one day you get a hold of a keyboard, and then well, there's some strings. Okay, well, that's an octave. All right, well, you just worked it out. Do you know what I mean?
Because people from Bristol famously have quite diverse musical tastes. That's what they say. What kind of things were you listening to back then?
Well, my mum used to have the radio on all the time. That was a constant, nag in the background. So you always had whatever pop music was being played. The stuff that used to stand out for me was people like ELO, Electric Light Orchestra, maybe Peter Gabriel and Genesis. That stuff there was drummed into you. What you didn't necessarily like it, you know what I'm saying? But you would appreciate, you would always wonder how they, made certain things sound so big and so compressed and so wide and so loud, and the vocal sound so clean. It was so radiofied. It was it was school and listening to stuff on the radio. But my whole upbringing is sound system culture, and where I used to live, you used to be able to hear the bass lines from traveling up the hill to my house, and it was like the Pied Piper calling. As soon as you heard the bass line, you would just get on your high horse, and then you would just stroll down the hill. There'd be sound systems playing, and it was just strictly drums, bass, vocals, do you know what I mean? And bass lines, and that was that. There was no orchestral elements involved in it, apart from when Wildwood used to play, when they used to put out the Chic records. That's when you heard real musical orchestral music.
So your first record, I was looking this up, was by Three-Way Split in 1992.
That's correct.
How did that come about?
Well, I'll tell you how it came about. I hooked up with two of my friends. One was called Winston, and another one was called Bonnick. They were two friends of mine who I kind of knew from just being around Bristol. And then we actually went into my brother's studio and just decided to put together a record and call it Three-Way Split. And we then needed someone to back it. So we found this guy who's associated with Circus Warp. His name is Chris Wharton. And he kind of financed it. And that's why it came out on WTP Records, which is Where's the Party Records. And at the time, Easy Groove was the main man in Bristol, the DJ that everybody wanted to have a piece of. So we called it the Easy Groove mix. You know what I mean? It's when people started putting names of DJs to associate the record with something that people would go, oh yeah, we know Easy Groove, bang, we're gonna buy that.
Yeah.
And that just came about. So we went into a studio with my friend Jason Alexander as well, and then we mixed that, and that came out, and it was a crossover. It was like a reggae, breakbeat, ravey, good tune. Mixed down wasn't too bad for the time as well.
Yeah, it's a really good tune. I was listening to it the other day. It was like very, I think for someone's first record particularly, it's like really, really well produced.
Yeah, well, it's the elements. You pick the elements, and and the message was cool, man. Why do the wicked ones rule? Nothing's changed in that respect.
Because that record was in 1992, and I'd have called it probably, if I had to give it a genre, I'd have probably called that hardcore record. Would you agree?
No, I'd call it jungle techno. That's what I would have called it.
Well, so when did you become aware that like jungle was a different thing, that it wasn't just hardcore?
Because there was no kick. And to me, it was more to do with a time and an era. I believe that music, this is my personal opinion, that it's all to do with the dates rather than the actual sound. I believe that there was a time when it was called hardcore, and then it turned into jungle techno, then it turned into something else, just jungle. You remember the phrases that the MCs used to use. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the people were starting to use different elements. And it's more to do with like, I just felt like as soon as that 4/4 kick drum, it wasn't in that part of a. As soon as that wasn't all the way through, then it was no longer hardcore, no longer like a techno or whatever. It became its own thing. And in that record, there's a breakdown where it just goes to just breaks, 808 bass, and that's it.
Yeah.
So that, you know what I mean? That's not hardcore. That's jungle. That's still jungle now.
Well, one thing that really interests me is that basically the 4/4 stuff kind of became happy hardcore, and the stuff without the bass drum became jungle. And jungle's like being it's kind of interacted with so many different types of music. Like in 1994, you did It's a Jazz thing. Why do you think? Well, for a start, why did you start using jazz then?
Well, we didn't even think about it like that. It was just Lonnie Liston Smith was a great record. We had our record collection. Do you know what I mean? To be fair, we didn't really distinguish about whether it was jazz or not. It was, to me, it wasn't jazz. To me, it was jazz funk. If anything, it was funk. If anything, it was well-produced music. It was great melodies. It was great sounds. It was whatever you had in your record collection. There was lots of records that we had. Do you know what I mean? That we could that we still draw from now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I cleaned all my vinyl just the other day. I'm going through Mark Moulin. I'm going through, Bob James. I'm just digging in the crates, just trying to find out what really, what makes you tickle. You know what I'm saying? Still to this day.
Well, why do you think like jungle works with so many different kinds of music? Like, because it works with kind of jazz elements, funk. You can have like really heavy. You think you can have guitars. People have done all kinds of things, and it kind of works. Yeah,
well, because it's creative, isn't it? It's tempos, and I think there was no rules. We sat down and decided, well, do you know what I mean? If it sounds good, just go with it. Do you know what I mean? You take a gamble, take a risk. It's like nowadays, everything's pitched up. You listen to anything listen to the charts, listen to anything. It's all pitched up. It just sounds, it's hard for me to say. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it was just a time when it was experimental. You bought a sampler, you wanted to sample. You wanted to just make. We used to make music, not necessarily to release. It was just making music. The fact that we released it was a bonus.
Yeah. One thing I've always liked about your work is that you've worked with a lot of the same people. It felt like you kind of had a gang of producers. Um, why is that? I mean, it seemed like, again, this is my view from the outside, but it seemed like you kind of found your group of people that you want to make music with quite early on, crust of people like that, and stuck with them. Why do you think that is? Why do you think you formed like that really strong bond?
I think we stuck with each other. I think we found each other. Nobody found anyone individually.
Yeah.
I think we found each other. We were all like-minded people who enjoyed working together. And, we found a common bond with the music. That's what helped us to be able to stick together through that period. Funny you should say that, because now we've all gone in different directions.
Yeah.
And, we find new people to work with. But saying that, at that time there, we were all probably at the same parties, enjoying the same vibes together, but we didn't even know each other at the time.
Yeah.
Which is something else that you should think about. Do you know what I mean? Imagine we were all there, but we didn't really know each other. None of us, were familiar. And then, oh yeah, I was there. Oh yeah, I was there. Oh, great. And that's another common bond.
Obviously, that led to Reprazent. One of the things that I'm interested about Reprazent is that, am I right in saying you wanted to perform live right from the beginning?
Well, no, I wouldn't say it was like that. What I would say that was, it was more to do with what happened was we were all making tunes and we were in the studio, and we were working our hearts out. We were doing the best that we can with what we had. And then we got signed by V Recordings. And then we got signed by Talking Loud. And then once we then started releasing all that music on Talking Loud, and we created this album, my A&R man turned around to me and said, okay, so when we go on live then? And we were like, oh yeah, we've got it all in hand. So it was kind of like we called their bluff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We didn't really know what going live meant, but we were quite lucky that we went on tour with Talking Loud a few times, and we learned, we saw firsthand like bands like Galliano, we saw firsthand and what they were doing. So we picked up a lot of tips along the way. But it was like, literally was just like, okay, so we finished the album. They're going to say, when we go on live then, we're like, okay, yeah, we're on it, boss. We just dragged the studio out of the studio and put it on stage. Hence, that's what Reprazent became.
Were you surprised by how successful New Forms was? Because it was absolutely massive.
Yeah, of course we were surprised. You know what I mean? We were in our bubble. Our goals, our intentions were never about a success rate. It was always about, it was about having a job. You understand? Before that, we never had a job. We never worked. We were delinquents who didn't have any type of like future, anything to look forward to. So for us, being signed to a record label was a job. It was like, oh my God, we signed off the door. We couldn't believe it. It was phenomenal. It's like, wow, we've actually got a job. And there's no way we was going to fuck that up or mess that up. There was just not a chance.
Was it a lot of pressure on you, though?
Absolutely. We loved the pressure, absolutely, 1,000%. At the beginning, there wasn't. Do you know what I mean? We didn't, it wasn't until we won the Mercury that the pressure really started to come in, because, you had to put yourself on TV and you had to learn the language of the media and be careful what you say and what you don't say. But before that, it wasn't really pressure. I think that's the wrong word. But I didn't, people used to come home from touring and people say, oh, or hear stories about, what was you doing on TV last night? It's like, people were confused because we didn't speak about it a lot. I said, no, it wasn't pressure. It was lovely. And it still is a great time. But talking about time, that this is only supposed to be a 20-minute interview, right?
All right, okay, you got to go.
I will have to go soon because I do. You know, I do have an important show tonight, don't you?
Yeah. All right. Can I ask one more thing? Because I've always wanted to ask you about this.
Yeah.
What was it like working with Method Man?
Oh, well, we worked with Method Man quite a lot, to be honest with you, and we were lucky to be around him quite a lot. Him and Redman took us on tour, and that was interesting. That was really, really cool. That was fun. Do you know what I mean? To be a part of, like, when they was at their height, him and Redman, they just took us wherever they went, we went. So myself and Crush were like the fur on the wall. And I've actually got some really, really great videos. I got like I recorded everything. So I've got all the videos and stuff. Which at one point I will decide to put online, but at the moment it's for my eyes only.
You're listening to Radio Primavera Sound, proudly presented by Cupra.